Retiring from your business? Congratulations, you've earned it. However, stepping away might be a bigger challenge than you think. Today, we find out what you need to do. Then, what to consider when moving across the border, and what to think about when buying a recreational vehicle. All this and more on today's episode of The Wealthy Life. Welcome to The Wealthy Life. Retiring from your business may be a bigger task than originally thought. Find out what you need to do from author and Royal Roads professor, Mike Thompson. Mike, welcome to The Wealthy Life.
Nice to be here.
So what makes you an expert in business succession planning?
I spent about 5 years as part of my research program at Royal Roads meeting different business owners and wanted to find out what their plans were to retire. And what I found was that many of them had no plans at all in place. Many of them didn't really have much of an idea of what retirement would look like. They kind of had this hope of serendipity. They'd meet somebody at a conference and they would buy their business, and that was it.
It would be worth twice as much as they originally dreamed.
And valuations a little overinflated as well, too. So I decided, based on that research, to craft what I call an enterprise transition plan as a tool to help business owners and give them essentially a roadmap to help them move forward.
Oh, this sounds fantastic, because I know a lot of business owners, they don't really think ahead. They're focused on what they love doing at the moment, which is working on the business, in the business, and then maybe a life event comes up or something triggers, hey, I think I might want to sell my business and retire tomorrow. Well, that's not enough time to plan, is it?
No, it's not. I was really amazed at the number of people that have made no plans at all. BDC have done surveys on this. Over 40% of business owners have no plan in place. KPMG have done surveys finding the same kind of thing, and also expressing concerns about valuation. Again, you touched on it earlier. A lot of people have somewhat overinflated expectations of what their wonderful business is going to be worth there. So with my research, I was able to sort of figure out some different sort of pathways that people could perhaps take on their journey to exit there.
Well, tell us a little bit more about these pathways. How many are there?
Well, there's one step before that too, which I'll just touch on briefly. The most important thing is to do at first a situation assessment. So figure out where you're at. So you need to understand who your advisors are, both externally and internally. You need to do a bit of a size up on your business and figure out.
Maybe get a current valuation so you're not caught off guard and you've still got time to build it.
Yes, so part of that assessment process in doing that size up is to figure out a valuation. A CPA, a chartered accountant can help you with that kind of work there. So set the stage for that, understand your personal financial situation as well, which is really important. So those 3 steps are part of the situation assessment, and then you go into looking at those 5 different pathways, which I'm happy to describe to you.
Yeah, please, tell us more about these pathways.
So there were 5 pathways. There weren't 18 or 2. It was I came up with 5. You know, there are some components. So the first one is a little tongue-in-cheek, but the first one is really do nothing and pray. And so I found a lot of people are just saying the Hail Marys, hoping that they will meet that person at a conference who can perhaps buy their business there.
Yep.
And a lot of people are stuck in that situation. They've made no plans at all. So you don't want to be on this pathway for very long. You've got to be proactive. But I put it out there as a pathway because it does describe the current situation.
It's still an option. It's just not a very good one.
It's not a great one to be. You know, so saying the Hail Marys, really, isn't really the way to go. The second pathway is trying to achieve an internal sale, and you can do that by either selling to family members if family members are interested or have the capability to be in the business. You can sell to your employees through a management buyout, and in some rare cases, you can sell to a large group of employees. So, in my experience, with internal sales, it's usually to a family member, or it's by an MBO, a management buyout, selling it to the key management team there. So those are the main components of the second pathway, which people can start to consider.
Number 3.
Number 3 is the external sale. So you go outside. You've not been able to find a family member. Your management team don't have an interest, perhaps, in taking over the business or the financial capability. So you go outside, and there are 2 components there, 2 key sectors. One is finding a strategic buyer that can come in, an outside company that
Yes.
can match your competencies, and they see you as a good fit for them.
Right.
The other one is a financial buyer, and those are a bit of a different breed. They're looking more at the financial return on their equities. They're more financially focused. They're a little bit more disinterested.
So maybe they would come in and buy it, but then they would put some existing people step up into place to run it.
They would do, and it could be part of what they call an aggregation strategy, where the financial buyers are bolting together a bunch of like-minded businesses, and they'll parcel them all up and possibly sell them down the road. In my experience and in my view, strategic buyers are probably the best ones to get the best value, and also it's the best way to retain the employee workforce as well, which is really important.
Number 4.
Number 4 actually is an interesting one again. It's really keep growing and then sell. So sometimes it's not quite the right time to put the for sale sign up, as it were. There are ways to continue to grow the business as a prelude to selling.
Make it more attractive for a buyer to buy down the road.
Absolutely,
that makes sense.
Absolutely. And there are different ways of doing that. Again, based on my research, you can either actually build from within, so you build a bench strength of your employees and identify potentially a management team to come on and buy the company. I've seen that work really well. Also, sometimes companies will bring in a hired gun. They'll bring in an outside CEO from Silicon Valley or wherever. That person will be on a contract for 5 years, usually on a high-performance basis contract, and they will run the company for 5 years, build revenues, build cash flow, build the multiples, and then exit
sell
there too.
And real briefly, what's the 5th one?
The 5th one is essentially harvesting. If all those different steps don't work, build a plan for 18 months or 2 years and harvest the cash flow. And then you can then perhaps sell to the employees, but at least you've harvested successfully the cash flows out of the company.
There are so many options for business owners to consider, and I know we went through all that lightning speed. So for those of you who want more information, Mike has written a white paper, Strategies to Achieve a Successful Business Exit. And we have copies of those. Contact us at The Wealthy Life for yours. Mike, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And when we return, find out what's involved with moving across the border.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
Are you planning on moving from the U.S. to Canada or from Canada to the U.S.? Financial advisor Shiraz Ahmed is here to give you some financial tips on moving across the border. Shiraz, welcome to The Wealthy Life.
Thank you so much, Sybil. I appreciate being here.
So what was the motivation for you behind specializing in working with people on both sides of the border?
So it's a great question. It actually comes from more of a personal thing on my side. I'm actually a member of a cross-border family, as half of my family lives in the United States. So I actually quite literally had to learn what to do well in advance of doing it professionally.
Well, that's great. And I know one of the main issues people face is their investments, because there's different rules on both sides of the border. So what are the things that people need to know?
So that's a loaded question, and there's quite a few. So I'd say really kind of starting from the top, the reality is that Canada and the United States, while we share one of the world's largest borders, it's over 5,000 miles in length, we do have separate securities laws in each country. And the securities laws are actually residency-based, not citizenship. However, the United States is one of 3 countries on the planet that actually have a global reporting requirement for their citizens. So unfortunately, if you're an American living abroad, you actually need to do things a little bit differently than the rest of us.
Right, because I know once you're an American citizen, even though you may relocate to Canada, you still have to file taxes in the United States. But if you're a Canadian moving to the U.S., you may or may not have to, depending on meeting residency requirements, correct?
Absolutely. So Canada's a little bit easier to deal with on that respect specifically, in that we actually don't have a reporting requirement globally, assuming that you've actually adequately severed yourself from Canada. So there's a bunch of tests that you have to go through in order to do that. But I would encourage you, there's a lot of resources on the Canadian government website, and also qualified cross-border CPA can help you with that process.
So let's talk about investment differences for a moment. What are some of the specific things people need to be aware of when they're talking about their investment portfolio?
So it really depends on which direction we're talking about. So let's go over two specific case scenarios. The main one being is that the American relocating to Canada. So an American relocating to Canada has several things that they just unfortunately have to do a bit differently, namely in their retirement accounts versus their non-retirement assets. So a retirement account, my best analogy that I use is imagine they're like a cement pole dug into the ground. They're a permanent fixture in the country in which you earned it. So you're entitled to keep it. You just need to make sure you're with a financial advisor and an institution that is legally allowed to work with you where you are or in your current residence.
And you know, that's not as easy as it sounds, because a lot of, as you said earlier, securities legislation requires people in the U.S. to work with someone who is licensed to do business in the U.S. and vice versa in Canada. Now, there are some people like yourself who are licensed both sides of the border, which is great, but it's not so common. Now, let's take for a moment...
No, unfortunately, it's not.
Let's have a look for a moment at the scenario where a Canadian moves to the United States and they have a tax-free savings account, and maybe they have some mutual funds in a non-registered account, and they have an RSP. What should they be thinking about?
So there's a bunch of things in that specific scenario. Number one being is tax-free savings accounts and RESPs. While they're great vehicles for Canadians, the moment that you become a U.S. resident, they're actually a little bit troublesome. So the typical advice is to not actually have those accounts. Unfortunately, the IRS does actually not view them as a tax-exempt vehicle the way that we have them up here. There are specific forms that are likely going to need to be filed. A lot of the benefits that you get from them being in Canada are lost when you go into the United States. Similarly, Canadian-based mutual funds, unfortunately, cannot be held by a non-Canadian resident. So similarly, you'll actually need to look at liquidating or actually finding an alternative solution, something like a US-listed product, which will alleviate a lot of those concerns.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that mutual funds are sold based on residency. So if you're living in the US, you need to invest in US-only mutual funds. And if you're living in Canada, it's got to be Canadian mutual funds. And that really messes a lot of people up. And when they have to sell some of their investments to reinvest into something else, obviously be mindful of capital gains that may be triggered along the way. So another question for you: if an American with a U.S. retirement account, IRA, 401k, moves to Canada, can they open an RSP in Canada?
Absolutely they can, assuming they've been in Canada for at least a tax year. So the main thing is don't jump the gun and do it too quickly. You have to earn a decent amount of income in this country first. But once you've done that, absolutely, and we typically would encourage people to do the same thing. It is one of the few ways that somebody who's earning a T4 income can lower their taxable income.
Well, Shiraz, there's so much to learn, and I'm grateful that you've put together this cross-border playbook for all of our viewers. They can get a copy. Contact us at thewealthylife.com. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
And when we return, we're talking about living the good life of traveling by RV.
The Wealthy Life is brought to you by investment dealer Raymond James. Life well planned. See what a Raymond James advisor can do for you.
A dream vacation means different things to different people, and for some, RV travel is ideal. Craig and Rose, owners of Arbutus RV, tell us what to consider before buying a recreation vehicle. Craig and Rose, welcome to The Wealthy Life.
Oh, thank you, Sybil. Nice to be here.
So what are the main benefits of RV travel from your perspective?
I think for most people, it's a variety and diversity of it. Your own timelines, your own place.
You just pack up and go.
Yeah, it puts you in the driver's seat. You're in control. You get to choose where you're going to go. It's on your schedule.
You're literally in the driver's seat, which is great.
Yeah.
Now, there's lots of things, though, to consider before buying an RV. What are some of the things that come to your mind?
Well, certainly for different folks, there's different needs. It's one of the reasons why the industry has got quite a few options in the designs. So certainly we look for how many are you sleeping, what type of travel you want to do. Do you see yourself as an adventurer going from spot to spot on a daily basis, or perhaps setting up somewhere for a week or two, or destination RVing?
Right, and I think about the different RVs that I see, and some of them are, I mean, you've got a truck and camper, you've got motorized, like a motorhome.
Yeah, Class A, Class B, Class C, so there's, even within the motorized, there's quite a variety, again, targeting different markets.
Okay, I saw a really nice one in the parking lot at the mall the other day. It was huge, but it looked like a semi truck.
Like a bus.
It was, yeah, it was
Yeah.
huge, but it was so sleek, and I thought, I bet you it is pristine inside.
It's amazing what they're doing with the RVs these days.
Now, I think that one also cost about $500,000. So I'm thinking, I could have bought a condo for that, you know. But I guess it's all about lifestyle and what you want, and even the tent trailer. And tent trailers, I think, are really, they're small, they're compact, they're light. And so even can a regular vehicle, a car, tow a tent trailer pretty easily?
Yeah, these days there's you know, again, for almost any tow vehicle. So if a family has a tow vehicle currently or a family vehicle currently, there's, whether it's a tent trailer or the teardrop trailers, they can be towed with almost any vehicle. We've even got some that are available that can be towed behind the motorcycle. So,
oh, wow.
And then the scale goes right up to big
so
fifth wheels.
It's all about being then super light, because you don't want to, on a vehicle, you don't want to burn out the transmission. And I think there's been many people who have learned that the hard way.
Yeah. We've got on our website, we've got a tow guide there. So if you're concerned about that when you're doing your research, certainly going online, bringing up that tow guide and matching, getting an idea of what your tow capacity is a good first step.
It is a good first step. And like you said, the number of people you want it to sleep is kind of important to know, and how much space you want, because it makes a big difference. Rose, when you guys used to do quite a bit of RV traveling, I hear, what was one of your most favorite memorable trips?
Well, I think it's a wonderful time to connect with your loved ones, and it gives you the quality time with everyone that you want to be around, right? Your family and friends. The wonderful thing about RVing is that you get to bring your pets along, so you don't have the costly expenses of pet sitters and kennel costs, et cetera, and you can really go wherever you want.
And you know, when you think about, you have your pets, there's no airport security, there's no lineups. How about finding a spot to park it overnight? How easy or difficult is that? Do you have to book in advance?
Well, certainly that's one of the options is you know, to get online and do reservations, both in the private and the provincial type campgrounds. But there's lots of other options.
Yeah, we tend to be a lot more spontaneous, and we love to do the dry camping off the grid, you know, do some boondocking where you have solar panels so that you charge your batteries, you can use your lights. You don't need, you know, you don't need all the services, and that way you get to experience a lot more of nature as well.
There's lots of forestry camps, recreation sites, even crown land that you can literally dry camp or boondock.
And of course, in a pinch, you can always park in a Walmart parking lot.
Yes.
I don't even know if they still do that, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Certainly when you're traveling from A to B, that's sometimes an easy option.
Well, there's lots of things to consider before picking out that ideal RV. And for those viewers who want more information, contact us. We have an RV pre-purchase checklist, which goes through some of the things that we talked about today and more. Craig, Rose, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
And after the break, find out how your investments are taxed. Don't go away. Welcome back. Thanks for your emails, messages, and tweets. Today's question is from Jillian. Dear Sybil, I need to liquidate some of my investments to use as a down payment on a new business. What are the tax implications? Which account should I pull from? Well, Jillian, there's a few things to consider. 1, how much money do you need? 2, what are your reinvestment plans? Because I hope once your business is a success, you plan on reinvesting back into your investment portfolios. And number 3, what type of accounts do you have? If you're pulling from an RSP, Every dime you pull out of that RSP is going to be fully taxable income in the year you withdraw it. So something to keep in mind. If you withdraw from your tax-free savings account, there's no taxes to pay. So that's a good idea, is maybe to pull it from your tax-free savings account. But maybe you don't have enough money in there to meet all of your purchase needs. And if you withdraw it from a non-registered account, you may trigger either a capital gain or a capital loss. So, few things to think about from a tax perspective. What does your income look like? Do you have other sources of income right now? I'm assuming maybe if you're just starting up a new business, maybe you don't have much income or any income yet. If that's the case, then it might be wise to pull a good chunk out of your RSP account, because everyone in Canada is allowed a basic personal exemption amount where you won't pay any taxes on that level of income. And then anything above that, if you still keep it at the low tax bracket, it's still a very good time in your life to maybe get some of that money out of your RSP with paying very little tax. However, if you do have other sources of income, maybe you've been working right up until this point in time, then you might be better to pull it from your non-registered account. When you pull it from your non-registered account, you still need to be watchful for any capital gains triggered by selling some things at a profit. But in previous years, maybe you've sold some things at a loss. Hopefully not, but maybe. And if you haven't used those losses to offset capital gains in the past, you can carry them forward and use them as an offset in this year. And of course, your tax-free savings account, you can always pull from that tax-free, and you can put money back into your tax-free savings account when you start making the big bucks. Before you decide, obviously review all of these different variables and meet with a tax professional. And that wraps up this edition of The Wealthy Life, helping you make smart financial decisions. Join the Wealthy Life Club by becoming a member at thewealthylife.com. You'll get access to everything you need to live the wealthy life.